welcome to CEC lectures. Myself Dr. Preeti Jagmani from Department of Computer Science, Arbhat College, University of Delhi. So in this series of database management system, in our previous lectures we have started with the concept of authorization, and we have understood what actually the authorization is, and let us take forward this concept of authorization in SQL. So there will be, authorization, if I am talking about, is about assigning a particular user the various privileges or various permission in order to access various parts of the database. So parts of the database, as in I can talk about views as a part of the database, or we can have relations as well as the part of database. So there will be various forms of authorization which are required in order to modify a database schema. So when I am talking about database schema, please recall your schema is actually about the overall structure of the database. So in order to we can say control, or in order to modify the database schema, we have various forms of authorization. These forms of authorization can be kind of allowing the creation and deletion of indices, that means index we are talking about. Then we have various resources which allows the creation of new relation, that is also a form of authorization. Then if we want to allow addition or deletion of attributes in a relation, that means we are talking about alteration form of authorization, which is to alter the we can say data in a relation. And apart from that, we also have one form of authorization which is about the deletion of the relation, and we call it as drop. So here we have index, resources, alteration and drop as various forms of authorization, in which index allows the creation and deletion of indices itself. If I am talking about resources, it allows creation of new relation, it could be new views as well. Then alteration is allowing addition or deletion of attributes, that means I am talking about the data here. And then drop, which allows the deletion of relations. So this is we can say it's a form of authorization which is there in order to modify the database. Now how are we going to we can say allow someone or allow a particular user to use these parts, or how we are going to authorization, grant the authorization. So the keyword here is the grant. So grant statement is actually used to confer the authorization. Then we have grant, the privilege list. Now this privilege could be your read, or it could be all, or it could be none, or it could be kind of update or insert. Anything from this list could be there, and that we have seen in our previous lecture. So grant, then the privilege list, there can be a list of privileges on which particular or relation to which user. Here also it could be a user list. So for example, a user list could have a particular user ID, it could have the term as public, which is going to allow all the valid users for the privilege granted, which we are talking about in this, or it could be a role. This roles we are going to see later. So for example, if we are going to use this grant statement in order to confer authorization, so grant privilege list on a particular relation or view to whom we want to we can say grant. So for example, I have written here grant select on department to Amit and comma Satoshi, or two users, let's say U1 or U2. So this is basically actually kind of we can say allowing this users Amit and Satoshi to fire a select query, or to kind of we can say to use a select query on this department relation. Now what is this Amit and Satoshi? These are basically names of two users which are going to log in into the database in the name of Amit along with his password, and Satoshi along with her own password. So what actually happens, that a particular user, if when kind of entering in the database, he or she is going to enter a particular user name. So that username I am talking about here. So for example, I have made a particular user, let's say U1. So that U1 is going to be kind of that user ID, and then grant is the keyword here, grant is the term, and then select or whatever privilege list is. It could be select, it could be all, it could be none, it could be kind of update all the privilege list which we have seen in our previous lecture on, and then the name of the relation or name of the view, because views also we will be considering later. This view, so it is not only about the relation on which this authorization is going to be conferred. It could be a view on which authorization can be given. So grant select on department to Amit Satoshi, or let's say U1 U2. Then this is about for example, I was just talking about views. So granting a privilege on a view does not imply granting any privileges on the underlying relations with the help of whose these views are being formed. So for example, we have a table or we have a student relation, and we have a view which is based on that particular student relation, and the name of the view is S1. So if I am going to grant a permission or a privilege for S1 view, that does not mean that that permission for the relation student is also going to hold for the user which I am talking about. No, it is not going to happen. That means granting a privilege on a view does not implicitly state granting any privileges for the on the underlying relations. Also, one thing which is very important here is the grantor of the privilege must hold that privilege for these specific items. So for example, I am a user and I don't have a particular privilege, let's say update privilege on the student relation. So how can I give that update privilege to anyone else, as I myself is not having this? So I can say the topmost user, which is your we can say super user, or if we talk about in terms of database management system to be very technical, this is going to be the database administrator. So database administrator is the one who is having all the permissions for all the the whole all the parts of the database. So he or she can be a grantor of all the privileges, but any grantor of the privileges must hold that privilege on that specified item. Now here, as we are talking about various privileges, let us try to kind of we can say see once more in detail that what these privileges are. So the first privilege comes as select. So select as in kind of we can say uh, um, it is allowing the read access to a relation, or we can say the ability to query a relation, or ability to query using the view. If I am going to grant the select privilege on a particular relation, that means I am allowing the read access on that particular relation and the ability to query that relation using any view, using the particular view. Now for example, we can say grant user U1, U2, U3 the select authorization on the instructor relation. So how are we going to write that command? We will say grant select on instructor to U1 comma U2 comma U3. So for these three users U1, U2, U3, the select privilege has been given on the instructor relation. Apart from this, we can have insert. So we can say grant insert on instructor to so and so users. Then we can say grant update on instructor to so and so user, grant delete on the relation name to the user list, and grant all if I am going to say. So grant all, which indicates all the privileges. So these could be select, insert, update, delete, and if we want to give all the privileges, the all. So insert, it is about ability to insert the tuples as the name indicates. Then if we talk about update, that is the ability to update using the SQL update statement. If you are going to give the permission to update, then only a particular user is going to we can say update using the update statement of SQL, and that update statement we have already seen in our previous lectures. Then delete is about the ability to delete the tuples. We have seen the delete command as well also, and if you want to give all the privileges, you can use the term all. So grant all on instructor to U4. So U4 has been granted all these privileges on instructor. So in authorization, we have seen here that we have quickly recalled that what actually authorization is, and what are the privileges under these authorization scheme, and how to grant these privileges to various we can say users. Now it is not just about granting of authorization in any system. There may be situations when you want to revoke that authorization, you want to take back that permission, you want to take back that privilege. So that is what you call revoking. For revoking any authorization in SQL, the statement, the earlier for granting we have used the statement grant. Here we will be using the statement revoke, which is used to take back the authorization. Then revoke the privilege list, whatever privileges you want to take back, whatever privileges you want to revoke, on which particular relation or on which particular view, and from which all users you want to take it back. So for example, I have initially given the permission of select to U1 and U2 U3 for the relation student, and now I want to I can say take it back, I want to revoke it. So the command goes like revoke select on a student from U1, U2, U3. So the revoke, the term revoke, and then the privilege list. Here I have taken just the select for which particular relation I am revoking on a student, and from whom I am revoking, it is U1, U2 and U3. So privilege list could be your insert, select, update, delete, or privilege. In the privilege list it could be all, but the situation should be one thing which is very important here is whatever the privilege list may be all, to revoke all the privileges which is being held by the revokee. Now in case of if I am talking about wherever I am looking wherever I am writing the user list, if I am going to write the term public, or if even in the grant the grantee list, or even in the revokee list, if I am going to include public, all the users are going to lose the privileges except those who are granted it explicitly. So for example, I have granted a select permission for a student relation on to U1, and then I have for all other users I have used the term public while granting the permission of select on the student relation. So if in case of revoke I am asking for the user list as public, it is going to, all the users are going to lose the privilege except that U1. Now another thing which is important here is, if the same privilege was granted twice to a particular user by different grantees, the user may retain the privilege after the revocation once, because that same privilege was granted twice. So it is not it's of no use if you are revoking it only once, and all the privileges that depend on the privilege being revoked are also revoked. So that is going to give you we can say a cascading type of effect. And what is this cascading type of effect? That is kind of that effect travels. So that cascading effect we have seen earlier. So all the privileges that depends on the privilege being revoked will also revoke. Now after looking into this simple statement of I can say grant and revoke. Please recall grant when I have told you that there is grant, then the privilege list on any relation to any user list. Now this user list may have some specific names of the users, kind of U1, U2, U3, Amit or Sakshi, whatever. Apart from that, this user list can contain can have public here, which is allowing all the users for that particular privilege which is being granted in the statement. And apart from that, I have told you that time that we will be discussing roles. So here let us see what do you mean by a particular role in case of authorization when I am talking about. So a role is actually a way to distinguish among various users as far as what these users can access or update in a database. So for example, instead of giving individual logins or individual credentials to the administration department of a university in which kind of, let's say, maybe 10-12 people are working. So I can create individual login for that or individual permissions for that, but they are talking about we are talking about administrative department. So we here we have a common role, let's say, in the name of admin, and anyone who can use who is going to have the credentials of that particular role can use this admin login. So create a role, we can use create a role and then the create role and then the name. So for example, create role instructor or create role admin. So now we have just created the role. Once a role is being created, we are going to assign the users to the the users to the role. So for example, grant role to U1, U2, U3. So that admin role is being assigned to U1, U2 and U3 and whatever users I am going to give here. So for example, just now we have seen create role instructor, and now in the next statement we are going to write grant instructor to Amit. So Amit, a particular user has been granted a particular role of instructor, and whatever privileges are given to the instructor, those privileges will automatically be given to the user to which that role has been assigned. So now privileges can be granted to roles or privileges can be granted to we can say individual users. Now let us say Amit as a user is having kind of one role as the instructor and another role of, let us say, admin. So both the roles or permissions of both the roles will be available to this user Amit. Now how are we going to give the permissions or how we are going to grant the permission to roles is again a very simple command, which is grant select, which is the privilege list, on the name of the relation, which is, let us say, we have taken the example of the relation takes here to instructor. Now instructor here itself is actually a role which we have just created. Now this select permission or select privilege is given to this instructor role, and as we have given the role of the instructor to a particular user Amit, that means Amit is going to have now this permission of select on takes. Now roles can be granted to user as well as to other users also. So here in which we have seen grant instructor to Amit, that means Amit here is actually a individual user. You can also grant a role to another role. So for example, I have created one more role and let us say create role teaching assistant, and we say grant teaching assistant to instructor. That means granting of a role to another role. Here the instructor is a role as well as the teaching assistant is also we can say another role. So, instructor is going to inherit all the privileges of teaching assistant, because that role has been granted or given to the instructor. So, it is not only one user, but it could be another role which can be given or which can be granted a specific role. So, there could be we can say a chain of roles also, if we are open to granting of one role to another. This could create a chain of roles. So, for example, we have created a role which says, let us say, create role dean, then grant instructor to dean, and then grant dean to Satoshi. So, this is actually all the permissions which are given to the instructor are given to the dean, and all the permissions which are given to the dean are given to a particular user Satoshi. So, that chaining of roles is also allowed in SQL. Apart from that, till this point we have seen whatever roles or permissions or authorization we were talking about. We talked about all these authorizations on a particular or on some of the relations, we can say. But when I have started with this topic of authorization, I have told you that it is not only about the relation, it could be other parts of the databases such as views. So, how are we going to assign the roles to the views? That is also, or authorization on the views can be assigned to various users or roles that we need to see. So, here we begin with the simple command, which is create view GeoInstructor as a select query. For example, let us say select a star from the instructor where department name is equals to geology. So, whatever we can say whatever records will be there which are going to be there with the department name geology will be selected from the relation instructor, and a view in the name of GeoInstructor has been created from this result set. Now, I am going to grant an authorization or grant a privilege of select on this GeoInstructor to a particular user or to a particular role, I can say. So, for that, grant select on GeoInstructor to GeoStaff. So, for example, a GeoStaff member is going to issue select a star from GeoInstructor. That query will work because the select permission, or we can say the select privilege, is already being granted to the granted on this view GeoInstructor, and that has been granted to GeoStaff. So, anyone who is kind of we can say getting into the system with the credentials or with the users of GeoStaff will have the select permission on this particular we can say view which is in the name of GeoInstructor, because that select permission has been given to this GeoStaff. Now, what if your GeoStaff does not have permissions on the instructor from which this particular view has been created? So, there was a relation instructor, then a view has been created GeoInstructor. Now, for example, the question here is, what if your GeoStaff does not have permissions on the instructor? So, here we are not talking about the instructor, I can say. We talked about that we can say the view, the specific view we are talking about. Then apart from that, this is also going to contain the authorization features, which more authorization features if I am going to talk about. They also contain the references privilege to create the foreign key. There is a privilege in the name of the reference, and this reference privilege is allowing someone to which it is to whom it is granted to create a foreign key. Otherwise, if revoked or if stopped, this is knowing and no user can create the foreign key on any of the relations. So this is basically happening. Why? Because uh, by default, if we can say, each and every user is having all the permissions, but it is up to the database administrator who is going to what permissions he or she is going to provide to which of the roles or to which of the users, and what permissions he or she is going to, we can say, permissions can also be stopped from the database administrator in order to maintain the uh, security concern. So, for example, there is a database administrator. He or she can assign various authorization on views or various authorizations on the relations or other parts of database to various users. So this is actually, in this list of privileges, there is there is a privilege which is about creation of foreign key, and that privilege is named as the references. So we can say grant reference department name on department. So department name is the name of the attribute on which the foreign key is going to be created, and department is the name of the relation on which this foreign key is going to be uh, you know created. Now, in order, if someone wants to transfer these privileges should come with the grant option, as in we can say grant select on department to Amit with grant option. That means now Amit can also grant this select privilege to others, because that grant option is actually open for Amit. So, Amit is in a situation, or the user Amit is in a situation to you know uh, provide provide the users further with the select privilege on the uh, department relation, we can say, and these are also can be we can say revoked. So, if I am going to now let us say Amit has given this permission or this privilege as select to Satoshi. So, there can be two options. If we want to take it in a cascade manner, we will be saying revoke select on department from Amit comma Satoshi cascade, or if we want to restrict it to the initial user only, we will be saying restrict only. So, this is revoke select on department from Amit comma Satoshi restricts. So, in order in which we are when we are revoking, it could, if you want to have a cascading effect, you can mention the term cascade, and if you don't want to if you want to restrict this cascade effect, you can also say restrict. So, here in this lecture we have seen the detail about the authorization. We have understood what actually authorization is, what are the privileges which are available in SQL, how to grant those authorization or privileges, how to revoke them, what actually a role is, and apart from not only the instructor, but the authorization can also be granted on views, and we have also seen some small features of authorization, and here is a list of references which is being used for the preparation of lecture. Hope you have enjoyed. I will see you in the next lecture. Till then, goodbye, take care.